Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Justin Artinet, and I am the Senior Manager of Newark Thrives at the United Way of Greater Newark. Oh, that's my timer telling me to go ahead and get started and stop having you all wait. So again, thank you again for being here. I know that some of you have been sitting for a minute just because we had some delays in our schedule this afternoon, but we are here and excited to talk about OST and Freedom Schools and the power of access. And just to get started, normally when we have these conversations about OST, the conversation is, well, what is OST? And of course, then I go on my spiel about what out of school time is, after school programs, summer programs, weekend programs, those kinds of things. But when talking about this particular conversation about equity, I was asked, well, why does OST need to be included in this conversation? i.e., are there inequities in the out of school time space? And the answer is a resounding yes. And so that's what this panel is built for. It's going to be talking about what out of school time not only is, also how the Freedom Schools uses the out of school time experience to strengthen the student success experience. So before we go ahead and jump in, I wanted to go ahead and just introduce our wonderful panelists. They are not here at the moment. They are in the crowd with you and will make their way up after I introduce them. So I'm going to go ahead and start with our first, get my intros right, our first panelist, who is Ms. Tynesha Gibbs. As a state level educator, Tynesha Gibbs recently served as the interim chief operation officer and the director of expanding learning opportunities for NJIT, New Jersey's statewide network for after-school communities. Ms. Gibbs is also, not a phone call. Ms. Gibbs is also a White Riley Peterson Policy Fellow and a national speaker, having presented at the U.S. Department of Education Summer Symposium for 2 consecutive years, and the National After School Association's annual convention as well. Please welcome Tynesha Gibbs. Thank you. Next, we have Marquise Guzman. Marquise is not physically here with us. Mariah has been working with the program Focus, and she's now 10 years working in the out-of-school time programs. As a product, she's a product of after-school programming, and she's a program assistant with the Focus 21st Century program. She also is a co-founder of the Black Pegasus Project. Mariah Jameson, thank you.
One thing for me is when it comes to Newark specifically, we have a lot of students within the urban community that don't have resources that they can go to. And majority of the time we see those students go from school to nowhere, right? Like they're just on the streets, they're just out and about, and idle time means an idle mind, right? So within the school system, if you have that out of school time, we're actually giving them something to look forward to. We're actually having them do things and just be, what word am I looking for? Occupied, productive, and I think that's very important for a child to have, whether it's going home and not having anybody in the house. A lot of the times we have students that go home to houses with no lights, houses with no water, and from that moment, I just think that out of school time gives them a second home. So,
Marquise, any thoughts on that? Why is OST important specifically in Newark, and how can we equitably draw more attention to that space? Wait, y'all see I didn't touch anything, right? Hold on a second. Wait.
You can hear me now?
Yes, you can hear me. Okay.
Just to piggyback off of Tynesha and the idea of a second home, I grew up in out-of-school time spaces as well. I was a Boys and Girls Club alumni here. And so in our spaces, we try to do the same thing where we create a second home for our students and the parents, right? And I think during COVID, we really saw how well that worked, where we were doing these wellness calls with families, and we saw just how important just the social interactions we had with our students and families, and how important those are during difficult times. And so I think just being there for support, whether they're socially, whether they're academically, right, but just being that second ear or kind of a shoulder for families to put some of their weight on sometimes.
And that brings me to another point, because I also wanted to draw attention to the fact that the First of all, thank you to the panelists for being here. Marquise actually has been dealing with the flu for the past couple of days, so thank you for still being here despite you not feeling your best. And I know that we had a bit of a communal moment earlier with Miss Gibbs, right, and having some other opportunities that she may have missed for being here. And that just goes to show also the strength of the network in the community, right? There are a lot of adults that sacrifice a lot of other times and spaces that we don't really give awareness to, right? And again, so Marquise is in his home, right? And he's giving his time on this Saturday, but so are these two wonderful women here that have done some really fantastic work. So that's why that question was help open us up and kind of draw us in, because we are all a product of some of these opportunity programs, but we're all a product of having someone sacrifice their time to make sure that we were better. So that's really a part of this discussion as well, because many times the OST space doesn't get the recognition or visibility that it deserves. And so this is why this conversation is really crucial. And I figured since that was the first one for all the panelists that I would just jump in and give my 2 cents before I stop talking officially. So we're gonna go ahead and jump right to the second question. And that question is based in the school day and OST. And so this question is gonna be directed to Ms. Tynesha Gibbs to start. And that question is, what is the importance of OST professionals and what is the importance of OST professionals and programs building positive relationships with school day teams?
Thank you, Justin, for that very poignant question. First of all, when we're talking about relationships are super key and super important across the board, right? Relationships with our staff, relationships with our coworkers, relationships, of course, with the students. When we're hiring folks, we want to make sure that we're hiring people that are going to build those relationships with the kids, because research shows that once kids have those positive relationships in their lives, they do grow up, like Mariah said, to be those productive citizens. They do grow up to have more opportunities. They do grow up to take more risks in life because they've been exposed to other people with different experiences. And so the same thing goes with OST programs and professionals, building those relationships with school day teams and staff. To be honest, the most important people in the school outside of the principals are your janitors and your secretaries. Right? Your janitors, that's the person that's going to have the keys to open up all the doors that you need, right? Your secretary, that's going to be the person that's going to make sure that you get your things on the calendar that you need. That's the person that has the ear to the principal. Not secretary, I'm sorry. Administrative assistant. But those things don't happen overnight. Relationships have to be built. They have to be established. And that's just like when you're dating someone, you're not going to date them one day and say, oh, I want to be married to you. So you can't, as a program, OST program, come into somebody's school building and say, oh, let's get married. I want you to give me money out of your budget so that, we can have this after school program. We want to help you, but we want your money. No, you can't do that, right? You got to start building these relationships and also showing them, what you're bringing to the table. So I just wanted us to kind of level set first about those relationships. And then I also want to talk about like the differences between after school programs in schools that have good relationships. So in my capacity as the director of expanded learning opportunities at NJIT, I go all across the state. So I get to go into schools. I get to do observations. Just in Newark alone and in East Newark, I have 7 grantees. And so I can tell you some stories about some things that I've seen. And it's in the schools like 13th Avenue, which no longer has a 21st century program. But it's in schools like that where the principal is so on board with the after school program and is so bought in, has like drank the Kool-Aid, where you can see that the possibilities of everything that we envision for after school can actually happen and take place. I can just tell you another story about another school district that I visited where the after school program is an outside provider. It's a YMCA. And they're so integrated into the schools that the outside provider, the YMCA, takes part in all of the school day professional development opportunities. And the school day people take part in their professional development opportunities. And the integration is so great that for students who might have exceptionalities or might have disabilities, they're totally integrated into the after school day. It's a part of it. And from that, I did a pilot study where I observed from those integrations that those students had higher academic and social gains. Specifically, the students that had disabilities or had challenges technically during the academic school day. And so this is research that we've seen, and I don't know if you can just show that slide really quickly. But this is research that we've seen. And so high quality after school programs are proven to accelerate student achievement and development. And it does so in these three key areas. And you can see it here on the chart. In attendance always increases, because if you don't go to school, you can't go where? After school, exactly. And so sometimes students are literally coming through the doors in the morning because they want to be able to go to the programs after school. Their behavior improves because if they get in trouble, they get suspended, then they can't also participate in after school, right? And then lastly, I just want to drive home the point that, they tend to do better on their coursework as well, not just only in the grades, but also in their testing scores. And this is all research that we've done. This is all things that we've been talking about for years. It's just, I feel that, no one has really been listening. So I'm very thankful that we have the opportunity to have these kind of conversations here. So I now know that's a little bit long-winded, but I just want to drive home this point real quick. Schools and education leaders, they need us. They can't do it alone. They can't work in silos anymore. I mean, I think this pandemic, if this endemic has taught us anything, it's taught us that. And so finding an OST partner, that's something, the first thing that you can do. Find a partner, include them, integrate them into the school day, and know that it's not different kids after 3 o'clock. They're all our kids. And if we all work together, we can help our students to, 1, recover, 2, rediscover learning, right? Because they have to rediscover that learning. And 3, we can help them to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me, Mariah, my apologies. I know, let me just take it back so you can see Marquise's face. Marquise, I know you couldn't see that slide. It was beautiful. I'll send it to you. I think he's muted. Okay, I'm not afraid anymore of the mute. So I'll give another 2 minutes just in case Mariah or Marquise want to go ahead and give a bit more about the relationship and the importance of the OSC professionals building positive relationships with the school day teams. Do you want to take it, Marquise, for a bit?
Yeah.
Okay,
definitely.
sure.
Just to talk about our relationship at 13th Avenue.
Please.
I think for even for program sustainability, right? Those relationships are key, because as Tanisha was saying, we're no longer a 21st century funded program, but we're still offering program after school at the school because we are so deeply ingrained in that school community that we were able to work it out, right? We contacted the principal, we let them know. Are you able to?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. We contacted the principal, let them know that we were, losing funding, but we still had some money to continue programming, and they were able to supply teachers for us from the school day to support our academic hour. We were able to offer some enrichment activities, and we're actually going to be expanding that in the winter with some new funding that we have. And so just for those reasons, right, we were so deeply ingrained in the school that the access would have been so great that we were able to work with the school to utilize some school funding and still continue our programming. And I think just as another point too, it's just the coordination of those student efforts. One of the great things about our program at 13th Avenue is that our project director sits on the student support team at the school. So she's very aware of what's going on with not only the students in our program, but the students in the school body at large as well. So we're always able to shift our programming to address some of the school and student needs.
Wow. And Mariah, I'm not sure, do you have anything to add to that? Okay, and I'll just say before Mariah jumps in, that's major. Let me just turn off my timer because you did a great job of not extending that time. There are many programs, and I think that we might have just missed that a bit, that gap that Marquise was talking about, where there was a funding opportunity that ended, and they picked up that gap. There are a lot of programs, not just in Newark, but we're talking about Newark specifically, that once that 5-year funding, 3-year funding, 2-year funding is over, those students have nowhere to go during that time frame. Those parents don't have that supportive system to rely on during that time frame, right? And so if you think about it in a way where they're already having conversations before the funding gets to the building about how in sustainability, we need to make sure that we're in partnership. And so that's a really great way and a really great example, because it doesn't always work out that way. It doesn't work out that once the funds are gone, that anyone is able or willing to say, let me pick up that mantle. So I'll go ahead and pass it to Mariah just to go ahead and finish that point.
I'll say this pretty quickly. One benefit from a relationship between the student, I mean, not the students, the after school and the daytime is continuity. I think that's a big factor. Sometimes when you don't have that relationship, the after school becomes this one program and the daytime is a different thing where they don't see a continuing feeling day by day. And I think that kind of disconnects them from saying like, okay, well, I like school altogether. You know, I think it's more like I'm only coming for after school. Like she said, some solely want to come for after school, but without that partnership, they want to say, well, I know my teacher and my after school teacher get along pretty well. Like maybe I should do well in school so that I could do well in after school. So yeah, just that factor.
Thank you.
Or sometimes the teacher working after school.
Right, because that's something else that we after school professionals like to point out is that all of some of the drama that comes from the students in the school day is one thing, but the drama from the staff members also comes into the school day, the after school program as well, right? So when we're talking about some of those SEL components, when we're talking about some of those professional development opportunities that Ms. Gibb mentioned earlier, being able to have the out of school time, the after school professionals ingrained in that and built into the development of the students in the school, it can only help, right? And that's what we're trying to continue to advocate for so that these after-school professionals, out-of-school time professionals are able to have that conversation. Because honestly, if we're being realistic, sometimes those relationships can be very, very problematic. And the only people who ever hurt as a result of that are the students, just to be clear. So just moving on to the next question, because we can sit on that for about 20 minutes without moving. We're going to move to the next question, and we're directing this question to Marquise, and we're going to be talking specifically about the Freedom Schools. Many of the Freedoms, I'm sorry. Sure. Oh, okay. Okay, let me lower it. Is this the one that yes, lower it. Good? About 50? Okay. She said you were talking too loud, Marquise. No, that's not what she said. That's not what she said. So the question to you, Marquise, is many of the Freedom School models take place in the after-school and out-of-school timeframes. Please speak more about this structure and how it contributes to the success of the students in your programs.
Definitely. So I like to talk about the Newark Freedom School and the Freedom School program as a learning experience, right, an educational experience for the students that's very different from the school day. At the Freedom School, we really aim to boost student confidence, right, in the classroom, boost their motivation to read, and then generate positive attitudes towards learning. And we do that through our 5 essential components of the program. We have high-quality academic and character building enrichment, parent and family involvement activities, civic engagement and social action, intergenerational servant leadership, and then nutrition, health, and mental health opportunities for families as well. And so throughout the day, students are engaged in the integrated reading curriculum, which is a heavily prescribed curriculum created by the Children's Defense Fund, where our staff actually goes out to Tennessee for about 5 days, gets an intensive 12-hour-a-day training, learning how to implement not only this curriculum, but what we call the CDF, the Children's Defense Fund Freedom School Way, right? And essentially the idea is that we're using literature about Black and brown children, about their experiences, right, to show students that they can make a difference, not only in themselves, but in their families, their communities, their countries, and their world, and with post-education action. And so the out-of-school time space is perfect for that, right? We're not different things. We do partner with some of the school teachers from the academic year, so they're able to take some of the learning from the summer back to their classrooms, right, and really help lift that look, I guess the outlook of learning for students who are serving in our programs as well. And we've had some benefits, right? On average, our students gained about 8 months of reading comprehension and skill while they're in our programs or in the CDF programs nationally. Parents through our surveys have noted students' ability to manage conflicts, not only with their friends, but with their siblings. They've noticed them more engaging in reading more. We usually send students home with at least a book a week, right? So they're engaging their families in these stories. And so, we spend the summer really just looking to transform their outlook on learning, right? And usually by week 3, we do see those shifts. We're in the school with the other summer school programs during the summer. And so a lot of times our students are recognizing the differences amongst our program and the other students, right? When it comes to our culture, when it comes to the way we interact with each other. So by week 3, they're like, hey, can we have recess by ourselves? Right? Can Freedom School have recess together, right? And so, we really build a family with not only our students, but with the staff as well. It's just a great experience for the students overall and their families.
Thank you so much for that. And again, that's just to give a bit of an overview of some of the work that is going on. And we really wanted to be able to talk specifically about how the after school time and out of school time space is the perfect, as Marquis said, breeding ground for those types of conversations, those types of social activities and interactions. And again, with some of the students preferring, right, that more individualized out of school time experience versus some of the other experiences that their students may have in their current classes. And so with that, I wanted to open that up just for the other panelists, if you had anything else to talk about specifically about Freedom Schools, or just a way that the out of school time time frame is a great way to engage students in that way. Sure.
So I do want to, say that was a great explanation. For me, when it comes to the students, I think that after school time, it's a different feeling for the students than inside the school, because there's a basic curriculum that they have to follow. There's no looking outward. There's no extra time because they have testing, right? So they're trying to get everything in. But when it comes to the after school, it's more of a social emotional learning, right? You have more questions, you get more answers. And then at the same time, for me, for example, this year I was talking to the students and they're like, oh yeah, we don't know too much about college. I'm asking them about HBCUs. We don't know. I'm asking them, what college are you interested in? We don't know anything about college. So we kind of went into depth. What is a HBCU? What is a Divine Nine? And we actually are doing research, and we're putting together posters and things, and everybody has a different Divine Nine sorority or fraternity that they're actually working on, and at the end they come up with their own sorority and their own organization where they get to go into depth. They're learning strolling, they're learning step, they're learning the whole foundation. So I think that allows them to have a broader perspective on what college is and what it means to have an aspiration to go to college, because some of these kids don't know anything about the college experience, about the college life. So it's definitely a space to open up and become broader.
I like that. I'm gonna have to come check y'all out at Focus. And I hope y'all going a little bit deeper than just, the strolling and whatnot. Yeah. All right. But kind of to piggyback a little bit off of what Mariah and Marquis said, after school is really an opportunity for schools to be able to go deeper into their learning and do things out of the box that they were not necessarily able to do during the school day. And that's part of the reason why I encourage teachers, if they are looking for an additional, way to make some income, do it after school. All the things that you don't get an opportunity to do, you can do that after school. Oh, you want to create a water robotics program and you don't have the money for it during the day? Do it after school. You want to do debate, any of these types of things, apprenticeships, what else? Of course, the SEL, we talked about that. Do those things after school. And it's important because not only is it going to help them with their learning recovery, but people underestimate how after school accelerates learning, because we tap into the sides of their brain and the mind that are not being tapped into during the day. And we actually motivate them to learn. And that's how we can have them doing math when they're playing basketball and they don't even realize it, right? That's how we are teaching them. It might look like they're doing some type of dice game, right? And it's not like craps or anything. I don't want you thinking kids playing craps, but they're learning probability, right? They're making hypotheses about things, and they're being able to think and do learning in a different way that they're not able to do. And so that's why the schools need us, because alone they cannot provide the breadth and the depth of the programs and the holistic supports that we can provide.
Isn't this a fantastic conversation? I ain't gonna say anything, which is the point. So really quickly, just not quickly, but I just want to make sure that I'm cognizant of your time, especially because we started a bit late. But I want to direct this question to you, Mariah, and we're going to just be talking about the general experience, because I think that something that gets lost when we're talking about all of this work, sometimes it feels kind of fluffy, right? And the feel-goodery stuff that you can't really put on paper. And the reason why I'm directing this towards you, Mariah, so let me put you on the spot for a bit. I actually, during the summer, I decided that let me just go and see what some of the programs are doing. Because after COVID, you just don't know who's still here. You don't know, even if they're supposed to still be here, are they still here? And so what we at North Thrive decided to do was a summer wellness tour. And so before that, we had a conversation with Tynesha and some of the directors in the Newark area, and they were just talking about some of those really, really hard problems that you can't really deal with unless you just know. I've been there to experience it. So I got the chance to go around this summer to a couple of different programs. And the first one that I went to was the program Focus. And I was immediately greeted by program director Doreen Francis, who was a wonderful friend of mine in the OST space as well, and Mariah Jameson. And we sat down and we had just this dynamic conversation. And I came to realize that she was a student in the program. And you should see when she walks around, the students are like watching her. It's like magnetism. It's like magic watching this happen. And I'm trying to figure out what's happening and what's different here. And she's like, well, this is home. I know this. I know them. I've been here. I've been there, right? And so we sat there and had this wonderful conversation for about 35 to 40 minutes about just developing the OST professional. But then I realized the OST professional was built in the OST experience. Right. And so, again, thank you, Mariah, for being here, because Mariah is not a fan of public speaking. And I kind of called her randomly and said, I remember a conversation we had a couple months ago, and I need you to come speak on this panel. And Doreen said, yeah, she's going to do it. And so, Mariah, if you could just give us really briefly, if you could, kind of like the day in the life of a student in an after-school program, specifically at Program Focus, and just talk about that impact and how it impacted you in your out-of-school time experience.
Okay, so I just want to start by saying I was a part of the Focus experience from day one when it joined, but it was after school, New Jersey after 3, right? I was only in the 4th grade. Don't hurt me, but it was just a great experience to be able to say, like, I had a home within the school system. From where I was, going home wasn't the perfect place to be, you know. In that space, we had different activities, but I really wasn't there for the activities. I was there for the conversations. I was there for the staff members, right? Because it is a different feeling from going from just writing and working and going to an after school program where everybody's there for you, you know, like everyone's there to know what you want, you know. Going from there, I became a volunteer. And as soon as I turned 18, Doreen gave me an application and said, here. And I think at that moment I knew, like, this was my calling. All the kids kind of gravitate toward me. They called me the Pied Piper. It was a big joke. But seeing how it was for me as a student, I wanted that same experience to be for my students, you know, for them to look at me and say, you know what, you really care about me. You really want to know what I think. You really want to know what's going on. So when we go to the after school program, we want it to be a different feeling. We want to know exactly what you want to do, right? How do you want to learn? So a day in the life of a student is when you come in, you get greeted with a smile. You want to know, hey, how's your day? What's going on? What's the highlight of the day? What was the worst part of your day? You know, just allowing them to have a voice, you know. Then going into activities, right? Those activities may be something small to what they think is small, rather, but you want to gradually grow, right? So if we start off by just saying, let's just have a conversation, right? And you see where their minds are. From that conversation, you want to build upon it. So what are we interested in, right? So if we're interested in college, right? So let's start from this small conversation of what college is, what college do you know anybody from college, to then broadening your aspect of what is college life? You know, like I want to meet a college student. How hard is the work? How, you know, whatever. And we did virtual tours of what colleges look like. Just being able to hold your staff accountable, right? So the students are saying, okay, well, you're saying college is like this. How do you know, right? So now I have to do the research. Like, I was in college. Let me tell you. Let me show you. Let me give you the stories. And building that relationship with the students will, you know, allow them to, one, have a bond. Two, we don't know what's going on at these students' homes. You might be the closest thing to a mom they have, right? So just knowing that kind of just changes your perspective of everything, right? Like, okay, so, and for me, I don't want to go too personal, but for me, like, people knew my mom, right? The people in the school knew my mom. My brother was the what do you call it? The troublemaker in class. I wasn't, but they knew her because of him. So when she would come to school and they're like, your mom's so great, but little did they know my mom was on drugs, right? So you might think everything is perfect at that person's house, and they're breaking down at night, every night, right? So when they come to the after school program, maybe they don't have that time with the daytime teacher, but when they come to after school program, they're like, somebody wants to know what's going on. Even if they don't tell me what's going on at the house, how was your day? It's just a big factor, right? So when it comes to after school program, I think that is the most important thing, just bonding with your students. And for me, I realized even though our program was to 8th grade, the students still come to me after. I'm talking about college students come to me just to ask me, like, okay, listen, I need advice, right? Ask me about like college parties, right? I'm like, I can't tell you about this, but just simple things like that. And it made me realize, like, there's a bigger picture to this. It's not just something small. Like, what we do is not small at all, right? We're shaping minds, we're shaping future leaders, right? So it made me then think about the students that's coming to me after 8th grade, and it made me realize that there's more that needs to be pushed. So I ended up starting a nonprofit organization with me and my best friend, and it's called the Black Pegasus Project, and it's geared to young females of color between the ages of 11 and 18, just so that we gain some type of sisterhood, gain some type of passion together, and allow them to, one, use their voice, find out what they want and how to use it, how to go about things, and just being able to, you know, express themselves in different ways. And I think that it builds, one, a great community, right? It's like an organization. When you're a AKA, you're always an AKA, right? So I can't say that, but she could, right? So if you're like, I think that starting that young allows them to know, like, I'm greater than this, I'm better than this, and I can do more than what I put my mind to. So, yeah.
Wow, thank you. And you said you didn't like public speaking. It's ridiculous. No, but, you know, and I'm going to give Tynesha as well as Marquise a chance to also add, if you'd like, about the experience of that. But I really wanted to make sure that we had a bit of an extended time to talk about that with Mariah, because this is what OST looks like in Newark, right? This, and not just because, and excuse me for pointing at you and saying this, right? But I think that it's important to notate that there was an investment of, hey, how you doing? That was the first thing you said, right? When we're talking about the day in the life, the first thing was an investment in the curiosity of that young mind. And that is, like you said, people thought, oh, your mom is so great, because we have that capacity where some of us were the students that were neglected because our other siblings were a little rah-rah in the classrooms, right? There still needs to be a space for those students as well. And now that you're out and doing things in your own professional capacities, you've now developed a nonprofit space to continue to help girls that you know needed the help that when you needed it. So first of all, thank you for continuing on with the work. And I know that it's difficult to do in these spaces because there isn't really a talent base for OST professionals. We're building it now, right? And there's a pipeline that has been carved out for us, but the specific support structures just haven't been as solid as we've needed them to be in the past. So you're an example of why the structures work, but why they need to continue to be funded, because there are little girls like you looking up to you and saying, I want to do exactly what Ms. Jamison is doing. So thank you again for that. So Marquise, I know Tynesha has nothing else on the topic, but Marquise, do you have anything else about the experience? Yeah, let's make sure you're not muted. There you are. You're good. Yep.
To that point about a pipeline, right? As me coming out of the think space, right? Being a student in a program, that's how I felt. I always say to people, I fell into my career. Right? I graduated college, and they were like, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And it happened to be an AmeriCorps position, right? And I was like, "Hey, this is it." From there on, it kind of took my career, and so over the last year, I've been thinking about that. And actually, through our program this summer, we'll be launching what we call the Junior Servant Leader Program, right? Where we're looking to build those individuals, right? Where they can come into the program, they can learn, alongside some other students, they can get experience with teaching. But the goal would ultimately be to have those individuals come back to the program, right? And to serve as our servant leaders once they're in college, right? To serve as our program leaders in our after-school programs during the academic year. And so, and we know that those are the individuals that are going to connect most with our students. Like we always hire from within the community or right from Rutgers North, right? Because we know they reflect the students. They have had some similar experiences, right? They can really connect to them. And it's shown like great success. We've had staff members going to football games with students throughout the year, right? After that summer experience, right? We have a staff member now who's been like, hey, I can't get in touch with this family, right? Can you get in touch with them for me? And so, we've had those kind of relationships that have built out of that. So like the point of the pipeline and community building are key, right? Because building that community with our families, to the students is going to be key to make sure any of the work that we're done is actually getting home.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And we're going to move on to the last question. We're going to give about some few minutes at the very end to ask any questions or take any comments from the audience. And I wanted to make sure that we did also make it plain that, when it comes to the work of the out-of-school time professional, I call it sort of like being a firefighter, right? Because you're running around and jumping to kind of douse different situations and experiences. And again, just when I think about my own OST experiences, right? I was a Boy Scout. I was in pre-college programs. I was a tennis player since the age of 9, right? And even in that space, playing a predominantly white sport, right? As a black man, right? That gave me some very interesting and integral learning experiences very early that I may not have had just because if I was looking and relying on the school day to give me that type of experience, right? So when we talk about the experience, it's not just the physical, I'm going to the after school program. It's all of those things that help connect who you're going to be as a result of participating in these programs. And so our last question is either, depending on who you are, one of the best questions to talk about or the worst questions to talk about, and that's about funding for the OST program. And I'm directing that to you, Big Sis Tynesha Gibbs. That's for you because you know how this go. But so my question to you is, what is the funding climate for OST programs currently? And how can we advocate for further funding to keep OST programs open and active here in the city of Newark? If you need me to repeat that, I can absolutely do so. Okay. She's like, I got it.
Thank you, Justin. So when we're talking about funding, it's important for me to give you all a little bit of context about, our great state of New Jersey. And so when I'm speaking from that level, but I am going to bring it down specifically for Newark as well. So currently there is no line item in our state budget for after school. In previous years, there were, for some of us who erupted in New Jersey after 3, we all remember the days when there was a line item in the state budget, but our former governor, Chris Christie, he decided to remove it from the state budget, and it has not been replenished since then. However, congratulations, Marquise. I know the Children's Defense Fund did get a $1 million allocation for their 4 freedom schools throughout the state of New Jersey, one being here in Newark. So that's $250,000 that will be coming into Newark specifically for freedom schools. But outside of that, there are two main funding sources for after school programming, and that is the CCDBG funds, which is the Child Care Development Block Grant, and then it's also the 21st Century Community Learning Center grants as well. So 21st Century is federal funds that are funneled through your state lead education agencies. And that is the capacity that I work with on the state through NJIT. So we provide training and technical assistance to the 64 21st Century grantees throughout the state. And then there's another fund that has come in, and y'all don't have a long time to spend it. You only have until September 30th, 2024. And so that is the ARP funds, and that's the American Rescue Plan funds. And so in New Jersey specifically, almost $500 million from the $2.5 billion allocation will be going directly to your LEA. So that's your lead education agencies. And that specifically came from your ARP funds as well as your ESSER $3. In law, there must be evidence-based interventions specifically for that $500 million. And there are strategies that have been specifically cited on what they're supposed to use that money on. And so one of those is comprehensive after-school programs. The other is, of course, summer learning, summer enrichment. It could be used for extended day. It can also be used for ESY, which is your extended school year programs. And so you all are like, this is public knowledge. You can look it up. You can find out specifically, how much money went to, your school. If your kids go to a charter school, because I did it last year, I sent it to the PTO and said, Phillips Academy got $40,000 to spend specifically on after school. What are they doing with that money for our kids as a parent, being engaged in that way? And so when we're speaking about funding and we're speaking about how we can make sure that funding is continued, all that comes down to is advocacy. They were talking earlier, about voice and about us all having a voice and about using our voice and why it's so important for us to speak up as parents, as educators, because all after-school professionals are educators. All after-school professionals are educators, period. It's up to us to call our legislators, to speak to them about what's most important to us. And if we feel like after school is important, then we need to have a line item in the state budget. And I'm speaking as Tanisha, I'm not speaking as NJSAC. When I say that, I am not lobbying, I am advocating as a parent on behalf of, after school programming and why it's so important. And when we talk about equity in this space, the reason why it's important is because Joe Schmo, my daughter goes to Gill now. The after school programs, you know how much it costs for her to be in the after school program? It's not free. So our kids are getting stuff for free, right? It costs almost $1,000 per trimester for her to participate in after school programs. So I choose from the a la carte menu. So she goes on Fridays to cooking class, which is $300 for one day a week. Okay. But just think about it. So those parents, and that's just not at an independent school, but even down the road in West Orange, right? Even down the road in Montclair, those programs are offered to those students for free, and they are eons ahead of our kids, right? Or they have the money that they can send their kids to these programs during the summertime or during after school program, and they're paying for it out of their pocket because they can't afford to. And if our parents can't send their kids to those programs, or if they're not given access or support to those programs, then they're being left behind. It doesn't have to be that way. Not when there has been money that has been funneled specifically for our kids to be able to get the opportunities that they need to be able to have access to the opportunities that they need to be able to have in order to compete in our global market. And so I just wanted to make sure that you all know that you can go down. There's actually about to be a legislative listening session November 3rd. So look that up. There's a legislative listening session on the DHS budget that's coming out, right? And so you can actually write in if you can't make it down to Trenton. You can send an email. You can send them an email and say, this is what's important to me. This is what I would like to see. And you can advocate on behalf of New Jersey's children, on behalf of your schools, on behalf of the other educators in this space, so that after school can stop being an afterthought. I stole that from your son, because he always said they make after school an afterthought. But so that after school is no longer an afterthought, because when the pandemic happened, I could tell you, I can name maybe 20 programs that opened their doors and the kids were there all day long, and they gave them computers and the parents were able to go to work. So when it was the pandemic, you needed us. And now that the schools are back open, you want to tell my programs that they can't operate? You want to tell my programs they can't go into the school buildings? But they were the ones helping you pass out lunches and pass out computers and risking their lives? I don't think so.
And I'll add to that really quickly. I know that we're wrapping up, but also in that regard, it wasn't just the students taking part in our after school and summer programs during COVID. I was a program director on the ground during COVID, and I know specifically that there were grandparents, TTs, and uncles, and what do you say about they're listening in, and they also needed things to do during that time, right? They shared in the out of school time experience. Why? Because they were out of school. Although they were in a school time frame, they physically were not in the brick and mortar type of building that would support their normal school day structure, right? And so after school programs took a lead seat in becoming full day agencies, not just to care for their students' educational needs, but to, like you said, help get not just the packets that were a mess. There are some teachers in the room that know that at first, but to get food to the parents, to get them social services when they know and we're hearing that, hey, my grandmother has been sick for 2 weeks and she hasn't said anything to anyone.
Internet access, hotspots.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we had a program, After School All-Stars, Nicole Harris. The kids made a video saying, I got a hotspot. Like a whole song, because they were able to advocate for, a donor to give their kids hotspots so that they could have internet access to even log on. Like, these were issues that we had prior to the pandemic. It just exasperated those issues. And so all of those inequities that we knew about, right? And we were doing the best that we could with what we had, right? But now it's more important. Like, now is the time for us to really make our voices heard so that our kids get what they need in order to succeed. And if we miss out on this moment, if we don't ask for everything now, so many people want to shutter step. If we don't ask for everything that we need now, they're going to forget about it. They're going to forget about it. So my advice is just push. My nana used to tell me, ask for it, let them people tell you no. Because if you don't ask for it, they're not gonna offer it, right? Ask for everything. Let them say, okay, we'll give you this, we can't give you this, but you can have that. All right, cool. And maybe I'll negotiate a little bit more, but don't not ask for it and miss this moment.
And just to wrap up that final comment, Marquise, anything from you about the funding and why it's necessary? Mariah said, no, I ain't taking that. Marquise, anything from you? You're muted, sir. There you are. You're good now.
I think you got that pretty spot on. Just to talk about our legislative funding, it's really just about advocacy.
Yep.
We partner with another office on campus who has been talking to the Black Legislative Caucus and Senator Rice for a while about the work we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've been inviting them to be guest readers forever, right? Come read to our students one morning, right? Come see what we're doing. Come to our Harambe. Come dance with us in the morning. And it finally paid off. And it was a shock to us, too. We got a call one day, and we're like, hey, y'all got this money. Come get it, right? So,
that's a call I want.
So now, we'll be able to do our program, like, for, another summer at a much higher capacity.
That's fantastic.
We're super excited for that. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Can we just give a round of applause to the panelists, please? Thank you so much. And I wanted to just officially end the panel so that we could open it up for questions and comments, because I know that, first of all, there are some other practitioners in the room, educators, parents, anything that struck you or any questions that you might have for the panelists before we go? Yes, in the back. If you could state your name and where you're from, that'd be great.
I'm also at the Cornwall Center.
I'll just bring you the mic, so no pressure.
Either that or everybody could just come to the front and
I think. What do you want to come to the front, or you want? You? I didn't think so. I didn't think so.
Vandine Campbell. I'm also at the Cornwall Center with Marquise on the research side. I had a question to Ms. Gibbs from a much earlier comment that you made about the extent to which programs can really be integrated in the school depends to some extent on the buy-in from the school leadership and the daytime, just to use your language. Why would that not be like just the norm? Like it's so positive. There's so much here. I'm just curious. I just want to round out that part of the conversation so I have a better appreciation for the challenges of after-school programming. It just strikes me as, a no-brainer. Like, why? Help us to understand. Thanks.
Thank you for your question.
As they're bringing the mic, just in the interest of time, I'll get started. So that, it surprises me too. It does. And it's really a humanistic answer. It all boils down to people. And the reason why it does not why it's not an automatic thing. It was a speaker earlier today talking about power and control. It really comes down to that. And oftentimes I think, we get in these silos and it's okay, this is your lane, this is our lane. And we sometimes play a little bit here, but we don't really cross and intersect. And I mean, the research is there. The protective frameworks talks about specifically if children have certain things in every setting, they're going to thrive. And those things are provided in OST programs. They're provided in a school day. It makes so much more sense that if there is a system that we can amplify the impact of, those protective factors that we're providing for the students. There are community schools. We don't have that many of them here in Newark, but I know 13th Avenue was trying to, do the community school effort. They did some pieces of it, but it didn't fully come to fruition. But if you look across the United States, the community schools efforts are amazing. It's a food pantry. It's a laundromat. It's a dental office. It's a doctor's office. Anything that you need, and the whole community uses the school, and so there's not so much of that trauma, that parents might have from their educational experience. But we just have to start working together. So the reason why people don't do it is because they're people, and people are complicated, and people want control, and they want to control all the things. And sometimes they just don't want to play nice in the sandbox. And it's a sad answer, but it's a truthful reality. And I think once we can get past that and to see and really respect what people bring to the table, whether they have the same pedagogy as us or not, then we will start to be able to really do some dynamic things for these kids. I've seen some things, y'all, across the state when people actually work together and take the masks off, and so yeah, great question.
I think we have time for 2 more questions if anyone has another question. Yes.
Hi, I'm Amanda Abacosia. I run a nonprofit called the GEM Project. It's a youth organizing nonprofit. Thank you. And I just want you to see if you can expand on that, because one of my earlier thoughts was what are those trends, right? You talked a lot about outside providers and how and the best practice where in terms of integration within the school day and having both different shifts engage in shared resources. And that's not that common, because I used to also be a program director running different after school programs. And there's always those challenges that you spoke of when it comes to humanity in general. So what are some really amazing things that you think in terms of trends that you see where this best practice has been shown? What are those things? Can you expand upon that?
Newark had a model. Doreen, summertime, summer plus. Summer Plus was the model. And this was when I was doing direct service. So this was when I was at 13th Avenue and I was a director, right? And not on the state level or the county level. And so we had a Summer Plus principal who was a vice principal during the school year. They got an opportunity to be principal in the summer, kind of show what they could do. And then the district assigned an ELT director, so expanded learning time director. This is someone that is specifically their only wheelhouse was to coordinate all the activities that were supposed to happen after 12 o'clock. So the academic day went until 12, and then after 12 o'clock, there was the extended daytime, right? And then there was a CBO director. That was me at the time. And so we all were a team, as a 3-person team, and we had to work together. We had to coordinate. We had to sit down. We were fully integrated into everything, from the planning of the day to how our staff didn't come in at 12. Our staff came in at 8 o'clock. Okay. Our staff came in at 8. They were, they served as aides during the day. They helped to integrate, during the day. They also helped out in terms of like SEL. And so, I had a student leader who was going to, I believe she was at Temple, but her expertise was in special education. And so they paired her with a SPED teacher who was doing ESY programming, and the kids loved her, and she was able to really help that teacher. And so Newark had a model of this. So you don't even have to look that far. It just has to be, re-implemented in order for this to work. And there was another, oh man, I want to give credit to them, but let's talk offline because I don't want to take up too much time. But there was another example right here in the city of Newark that was really, really great and powerful that I had an opportunity to experience. I want to share it with you, but I don't want to take up too much time, and I can't recall right now the name of the school.
Sure. Last question, and we'll end officially. All right, you two, we up here. The two of you, yeah, ladies first.
My name's Jasmine Smith, and I have been in HR and recruitment for the last 6 years in the city of Newark, primarily in charter school spaces. And a big gap that I find, because I'm a AmeriCorps alum, so I've been to Harambee at the Bethany Cares Freedom School, so I've done my reading time. But I love OST programs. I came up in those programs myself, and then being a TRIO student on this campus, I got college credits. So I am a product. When we were talking, I was like, we see each other. But you want to be able to, from a recruitment and people standpoint, take those people from OST and bring them into the school to do two things: to ingratiate them in systems, to make sure they do understand. Like at school, we have call and response. We do this. So if you do it after school, it is synergy for the kids. But as a recruiter and a people team leader, it's so hard to get those people into school because we have a teacher shortage crisis. In 2025, we'll need 2 million teachers to educate our kids. We don't have them, but y'all do. OST is full of great educators that either don't see the access to schools or don't know how to get into schools. So my question is, where are y'all finding y'all people, and can we go together? Because I'll hire them.
Well, we y'all finding y'all people because we got to work for a shortage too.
Okay, so then let's go together because it's really, there are gaps, right? And we have people who want to stand in the gap. New Jersey is making it easier than ever to get a teaching certification right now. Mm-hmm. And there are people like all of you in this room who are saying, yes, I've done OST or I've been in those spaces, but the gap of kids needing that support from 7:30 to 7:30 is huge. And so would love to hear any thoughts that you guys have. Where do you guys go to find students? Is it on college campuses? I will go anywhere for anyone if they want to be in service of children.
Great question. Thank you. Yeah, I can take a stab at it. Okay, Marquise, we'll let
Mariah and then Marquise.
I know you can't see. I apologize.
I know it's a timely matter, but seriously, in-house, I realized students look at me and they're like, well, if she did it, why can't I get it? And it's multiple kids that came up to me like, oh, can I work? It's a student in my program, and she's like, listen, I'm graduating a year early. Am I able to work for Focus? But it's kind of like building them to get to that status. I think a lot of the times you want to bring in volunteers, so that they get the feeling of what it's like to work with kids, because it's one thing to say oh, I like kids, right? I worked with babies at a daycare. I don't like babies no more. right? I'm like, the older kids are for me, but it's definitely like filling it out first, right? So if I get a bunch of 17-year-olds, hey, listen, how do you feel about this, right? You partner them up with the staff that you have, see how they work with them, and then you're kind of grooming them to be that next person. It's a timely matter, but if you start this year, you got a great job for next year, you know?
And yes, Marquise, I'll switch over to you. Yes, sir.
I would say, one, use your network, right? I think I talk about Freedom School way too much sometimes. And this year, for instance, when I sent out my notice, hey, I'm looking for my servant leader, I got about 15 resumes, like right away, and they were all super high quality, exactly what I was looking for, right? You even had people saying, interview this person, like, let me know what you think. I think they were a perfect fit, you know, for what you were doing last summer, right? And so that's one, just kind of using those. Second is make contact with all the university career development offices, because in about April-ish area, all of those students are like, hey, do you have any summer job opportunities? Because most want to stay around campus, and that's the perfect opportunity to start snatching them up. I know when I was an AmeriCorps program director, I lived on the William Patterson University campus. I would call up their HR, their career development office, and be like, hey, what are y'all doing today? They're like, we have a family student Monday. You want to come do cornhole on campus? And I'm like, yeah. You know, let me talk about my opportunity while playing cornhole with some of the students. And so that really helps support, and social media, right? Using your staff to kind of beef up what you're doing on social media and talk about their experience can also help bring in some of those college APs. And they can bring in some of their friends as well, because they've already been working with you and they already know what you're looking for.
Awesome. And I'll also add to that before we go to the last question. There's also, when talking about this professional space, a lot of OSC professionals aren't encouraged to sit at the table as educational thought leaders. They're usually pushed to the side as, oh, well, you know, y'all just put them in a gym and that's it. Oh, can you take my recess? I have an actual other job to do, right? So when it comes to the conversation about where do you find them, they, like I said, are in the OST experiences, right? So they're there, and if you're even, and there are a lot of people who come into the OST space that aren't built for it, right? So there are some who think and actually want to produce programs where it's just, let's just put them to the side and give me my paycheck so I can text in the corner, right? And those programs exist as well. So it's a matter of building the professional, but also professionalizing the market so that there's an attraction to do the work at any level, right? So if we're talking about having AmeriCorps service members who know for a fact, I'm about to give up a year of my life to do some service, why not help build them in that space? And so that's kind of another layer to it as well. I think that there's just some issue with persuading some of those who are doing the work to continue to do the work. And sir, my last question.
I really don't have a question, just more so a comment.
Sure.
And that is because most of my questions, all of my questions were answered via.
Please point that towards you, sir.
Most of my questions were answered via your presentation. I just want to piggyback on the question the young lady in the back had as to why, there aren't more programs in more schools. And that is, let me get back to something else. I didn't know that the AmeriCorps students that I was cooperating teacher with, I didn't know they could end up in after-school programs and freedom schools. I thought they were on the road to become, a real, classroom teacher. I didn't know it was diversified as many of the things that you guys are doing. But there's a lot of administrators and people who run schools, they don't want anybody near them to observe what goes on during the daytime. That's why, sometimes, when I say that I've worked in 9 districts, people say, can't keep a job. But the problem is, I can't keep my mouth shut and say, hey, this is a better way to do this. It's a better way to do this. So that's why a lot of times they can't get into different schools, is because the administration is so insecure that they don't want other talented eyes observing what they do, what's going on in there. It comes to a thing of somebody going to let out our dirty laundry and all types of phraseologies like that. But and once again, I just, you know, it's so informative to know that those young people that I interned with, they was under me watching what I was doing, and they could end up doing things that you guys are doing. I think that's great.
Thank you so much. What a perfect way to round us out. Again, thank you so much. The program is officially the panel has officially ended, but I know that some of the panelists will be able to take some personal conversation to the side. Again, thank you so much for being here and giving the OST and Freedom Schools some time of your day on a Saturday. Go ahead on and enjoy the rest of your days. Thank you so much. Have a good one. Thank you, everybody.